Hey everyone, this is Michael Cole, VP of Marketing at Everflow. And today I'm joined by Bruno, and we're going to be talking about writing the Rocketship, what it's been like scaling partnerships while at Oyster, and the company growing 6x within a year. So I'm sure he'll have some crazy experiences, and I've learned a ton during that time. So really quickly, Bruno, do you mind giving the elevator pitch for Oyster?
Yeah, of course. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. So Oyster is a distributed HR platform that empowers companies to hire, pay, and care for talented teammates, regardless of their location.
Yeah, good time for that type of company for sure.
Definitely.
Cool. And what's your role there?
So I'm basically the partnerships lead now for the EMEA strategic partnerships and for our VCs, incubators, and accelerators program worldwide.
Oh, interesting. Cool. And then what has been like your number one focus for handling these partnerships?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a lot of different things, but I guess like the main one is to build the relationships. It's been almost a year since we've started the partnerships team at Oyster, but we're looking at these partnerships for many years to come. So it's always been about building relationships.
Awesome. And then how did you end up joining Oyster in the first place?
Yeah, it's actually a fun story. So almost a year ago in January, around last year, I started to understand a little bit more about the space. I've been working remotely since 2018. So I've understood a lot about the space, and I was trying to research a little bit more about EORs and all the space. And I became aware of Oyster. And back then I started talking with the team and say, hey, it feels like you don't have a partnerships team. It feels like you should have somehow of a plan. And back then I was talking to the head of sales, Alex, and he said, well, just build one and show me. And so I built a plan, sent it to him, and he was like, great. And this was on a Friday. On Monday, he said, let's jump on a call with the CEO and with Tony. And then at the end of the day, I had a job offer. So it was really that quick and that easy in some sense. The company was around like 50 people, less than that even.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished around of hiring. So it's definitely one of those things that like, it's amazing that it's pretty rare when someone like is very like proactive and like sends like a strategy or like a way that they can provide value. And like, it's usually a shoe in to get hired.
For sure. That's always like whenever someone asks me like what piece of advice you have to get into a company, I say just do a little bit of the job. Just show how much you have the experience for it, especially when you feel like you don't have all the requirements in the job offer, in a job position, which I always feel like you should apply nonetheless if you feel you're capable of doing it. But just do a little bit of the job, because I think one, it helps you to understand if you like it, but also it will help you way better to set the conversation going in a positive way with the people there, right?
Yep. And it helps them understand how you're special and different from other candidates.
Exactly.
Or in this case, you're the only candidate.
Yeah, in this case, the conversation was fairly easy on that sense. We didn't even have like a job posting or anything for the partnerships role. It was kind of just the conversation started and just flew naturally to that.
That's awesome. So what led to this conversation in the first place is I saw on LinkedIn that you posted that since you've joined Oyster, it's grown 6x, which is with 1 year. That's insane. Can you talk about what has been the experience and like how have you been surviving it?
Yeah, I mean the experience has been great. Like above all, it's been super fun and exhilarating to work on it. It's been a lot of hours on that as well, but it's also been such a space that I love. Like I said, I've been working remotely since 2018, so it was kind of like something that I do it for a lot of like because I enjoy it. But it definitely feels a lot like that expression of building the parachute while skydiving at the same time. So it was a lot of like, especially the first 6 months where it was just me testing out the partnerships for the team, was kind of like building out the strategy and executing it at the same time, not knowing for 100% sure if that was going to work out. We just kind of like just went with the flow and just saw if it was working or not. Obviously, we're operating in a very hot market and it helped a lot, but still, it was kind of like, let's see, in the morning you would build a strategy, in the afternoon you had calls testing it out. It was a lot like this.
And I know that you're hiring a bunch of people right now, so you obviously have done some stuff right. Can you talk about like what's been working best so far of the things you've tested, just like in the sort
Yeah.
of like broad approach stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess like one of the things that we did, because I feel like if you really want to take a very holistic view of what Oyster does, it's so easy to have partnerships. It's very easy to find partners in the HR space, in the future of workspace. It's so easy. So I guess like the thing that has been working quite well was being able to say yes and no clearly, because what we did is like I always like to bring like a clear outline of the goals to the calls. If it's like referrals or co-marketing or both, it's always been like, what's the goals that we want to achieve? And this way it made us like very laser focused on our strategy, because we sort of like build out what we wanted and just went after, instead of building like quote unquote like a marketplace where we just have random partnerships with companies that are great, but maybe just don't fit the strategy that well.
Mm-hmm. So let's break that down, because I mean, that's easier said than done. So like, can you give an example of like, what is like, say like a vertical or company type that you have a successful partnership, and like, what does that actually look like now that you've like started scaling it up?
Yeah. So for example, one of the things that I did a lot when I started on my role was I just started talking to the sales team, to the customer success managers. There weren't a lot of them, but a lot of the people that were just in touch on a day-to-day with our prospects and customers and everyone that touched the platform. And I just try to understand a little bit of like, what's the sales cycle like, what type of tools they're interested in and stuff like that. And one of the two key industries that we identify right from the beginning was relocation partners and talent partners. And this means like companies that help hire at scale and just help fulfill roles to high growth companies that we serve that are in a remote setting. Companies like, for example, like Touring or Six Nomads, and just working with these companies on setting out like a clear process to refer each other, understand when our sales team needed like training. So we invited them to our sales meetings for them to do demos on the product, how they pitch the product, all those sorts of things. And then just start to work from like cadences every week on try to understand like, does this work? Does this not? What's your ICP? How should we approach it? And then alongside a partner marketing person, which we hire at the end of the summer, starting working on a co-marketing playbook and understand like, this is where you would fit within our category. So this is the type of content that we can do. This is where we educate the audience. This is where we actually give them a checklist on stuff. And so that's been more or less the way we've been working on.
Awesome. And I mean, always the difficulty of partnership is, even if it's like a really good fit, there's like the inertia side is super hard to overcome, where they'll be like, oh, this sounds awesome. And like, yeah, it's a good fit. And then just nothing will happen. Have you seen anything on your side that sort of like really helped like get them to take action now, rather than just have it for 2 quarters from now that they never get around to?
Yeah, it is a good question, because I think that's the biggest problem of partnerships. I've been in a lot of different calls with Oyster and outside of Oyster, where the call goes great. It's just, we're super excited, but then nothing happens since that. And one of the things that I try to do is I do as much work as I can on my side to them. So I try to bring like the sales team to start doing referrals right away to show them that there's interest. Even with like last year, we were a lot of the times on the conversation, the smaller player, even though we're growing. Now we're a little past that. And sometimes we are the big player, which is interesting. But being the smaller player, you just kind of wanted to show your value. So we would just do as much as we can, right? I remember like doing blog posts together where we just wrote the blog post and just sent it to them. It's like, do you like this? Does this fit? And they would just do one correction here or something there and just pinpoint a few things. But we just did as much as we could on our side just to show the value and how much we're investing in that relationship. And I feel like with 95% of the partners, they realize, okay, they're putting effort behind this. Let's do the same.
Yeah, it's definitely always like, you can tell very quickly the ones that are actually putting skin in the game, or like are really motivated. It's very easy to find champions once you get to that phase, but for most partnerships, getting them to take that first action where they can show like, okay, like this is legitly going to be a champion for like a partnership, like that is definitely always a challenge in itself.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever sometimes you jump on a call and the person, you ask them, what's your overall take for this partnership? And they just come in with like certain ideas, goals, and they're like, I've done research and I think this was a great idea. From the get-go, this is going to work out. And sometimes people just want to get started, but they don't have a partnerships person, or it's their head of sales that comes in on the call, and immediately it will be tricky because they have other responsibilities. So it's very hard to push things forward, even though both parties want it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So you mentioned that, especially in the early days when you were the small player, you very quickly have become not the small player, that you were having like your sales team referring potential leads over to these partners. What were sort of your like criteria of, okay, like this partner is because like obviously like sending leads to someone else is also hard. That's a big ask of your team. So how did you identify like, okay, this partner, like clearly there's a reason to do this that justifies like us putting that extra level of work on top of just the partnership team handling stuff?
Yeah, so one of the things that I did from the get-go with a partnership with my point of contact on the partnership was try to understand what is going to be the way that we're going to work together in bringing in referrals, right? And then the other thing that I did was that I would ask them for very specific information. So one of the first few things that I did internally was that we're big on Notion at Oyster, and so I built this big page where like each partner, elevator pitch, more information that you think could be helpful, use cases, discounts, all of that. So it's just basically there for our sales team to go there and see, and they can see job article, relocation and visa. And they're like, okay, this is what they need. And it's in Europe, in EMEA, and they know exactly what it is. And then obviously always have me as a point of contact to start the conversation if there's a question, but also always the email of our point of contact to send an email, and then just start the conversation from there. So I just like put everything that I could into one single big page to make sure that we could get that conversation going. With some of our partners, we even have Slack channels with them on Slack Connect that just keep the conversation going, just so we know that we're always like one message away of asking a question. If it's a fit, let's do the intro right away via email.
That's definitely great advice. We have partnership pages too, but I think that really like pushing your sales team to use that, so it's not just about SEO or just about like showing it to the partner, but actually using that as the sort of battle card for your sales team is a really smart idea.
Exactly. We've built battle cards. We built like presentations internally so they can share on the email, the Notion page, everything we could think of, just because we just want to make sure that there's no information missing for them to do the intros.
And I guess I should just define for anyone listening. So a battle card basically is usually just like a sort of a quick overview sheet for your internal team where they can see like, okay, here are the main features they have, here are the benefits, here are the ways we work together. So it's just making sure that your internal team has everything they need to understand the value of the partnership. Cool. So can you talk about sort of, there's obviously like multiple types of partnerships. So what types of partners to you are sort of like the ones driving referrals rather than just being on the more strategic side? So they're actually bringing in potential customers, knocking at your door.
Yeah. So the way we've split the partnerships team is that we have a team focused on product integrations. And so we'll develop integrations now with ATS, HRIS tools and stuff like that. Then we have affiliates. We just got started with that. We actually launched our affiliate program yesterday, so feel free to check it out. And basically this is like to work with HR agencies, headhunters, boutique HR companies and stuff like that. And then we have the strategic programs, which are with SaaS and HR tech tools with VCs, incubators, and accelerators. And so all of them, at the end of the day, the goal is to bring referrals and also co-marketing, less with affiliates for sure on the co-marketing side. But kind of like what we do is that every partner that we work with from the beginning has as a goal. And sometimes it's referrals, sometimes co-marketing, sometimes it's both. And so as long as we are on the same page from the beginning, that always works out.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely really good advice. And so for the integrations team, like how does that work? Because that's always the sort of challenge, is how much you can do integrations versus like when it's a burden on your technical resources. Is that completely independent and just Oysters built in a way where they can just take ownership of it? Or is that working with your engineering team to actually build out the integrations?
Yeah, so it depends on the partner. So right now we're just testing it out. First of all, what we did was we did a bunch of discovery calls with a lot of companies. We did like internal forums to our customers and team members to understand which systems that they use, so we could pick up that data and decide which ones we would go forward first. It's a lot of prioritization, and definitely like resources from the tech team are also very involved. And then we're just working on this. We'll probably get started now working with API connector on the space before building out from the ground up. I think it's a good way to start with like companies like Merge API, for example. Just helps quite a lot and just getting started. Yeah.
For sure. It definitely makes it a lot easier. Although it always requires quite a bit of scoping to make sure that whatever is the data that they consider important is getting passed to you in a way that's important to you. So it always ends up being a little bit more difficult than just the connection, because it's really just about building the connection and then making sure that that connection makes sense for both sides, and it's actually like something customers need. Cool.
Yeah, and then figure out like all the.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, figure out also like the commercial agreements behind it, right? Because it's something that we're starting to do it for the first time, so we'll need to figure that out. So that's also been a challenge.
Cool. And how are you measuring the performance of your partnerships or the value?
Yeah, so like I said, it first starts with the goals. If it's referrals or co-marketing or both, in that sense, and then what we do is that obviously we count depending on the goals, like referrals made, referrals done to them, impressions on social media, how much they've been in touch with us. This is like a lot of these areas are to improve, because it was only me for a long time, and we built out a full-fledged team after the summer. It starts in September, then November and December that we hire more people. And now we're getting started, all of us together, figure these things out. But these were sort of the ways that I was measuring.
And we're just handling that through like manual counts, spreadsheets, email.
Oh yeah. Google Sheets and Notion for sure.
Cool. And are you using any tools or platforms for managing these relationships?
Yeah, well, I mean, 90% of it so far, it's been Google Sheets and Notions. Like Notion, like I would say, we're doing a lot of work now on Salesforce as well to make it easier and smoother for the intros and referrals to get made. And then we can pull reports on partner pipeline generation, so we know how much we're generating to the company. And we've started to dabble a little bit with tools like Crossbeam and Reveal, for example, but it's still in the beginning in that sense.
Yeah, we started using Crossbeam maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and it's definitely a really cool thing. I think it's something that we're continuing to refine our strategy, but basically what Crossbeam does, really simple, is that you have a partner, you both upload your CRM list, and you can see where you have joint customers, where they have customers that are your prospects, et cetera. So it's a ways to like really focus on what referrals to make, where is the best opportunities, et cetera, in a really quick way. So I think that, I mean, for us, it's been a really easy way to get a lot of partners onboarded and like find like good ways to work together. And now it's just making the playbook of like, okay, once we find all these prospects we want and prospects they want, how does that interaction happen, or that introduction happen in a way that makes sense? So it's definitely one of the coolest tools that I think we've found for partnerships so far, of just being able to really streamline this, like how do we actually know which referrals to ask for?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it for sure.
Cool. And how important is the partnership division towards growing Oysters, like future growth?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because I feel like companies sometimes don't put a lot of meaning behind it. Some others do. And I guess like with Oyster, like there's a lot of people at the company that work together at a different company. Like even the founders, they met at a company that our CEO also founded before. And for them back then, I think partnerships was a big growth lever for them. So I feel like they put a lot of resources behind. I've been very fortunate to have like just a green light in terms of like what I want in that sense, which I know a lot of people had. Obviously, you always need to back it up with data. You always need to make sure that the use case makes sense. But it's been quite important for us. It's been a very good source of pipeline, and above all, it's been something that I don't know if it's your experience with it, but the closed won rate with partnerships with referrals from partnerships has been way higher than outbound and inbound. And so that also helps quite a lot because that makes our sales team likes us and that also makes our job easier.
Yeah, it's definitely massively sky higher. I mean, obviously there's always this sort of like data artifacts as you have all the like junk leads that are sort of like throwing off your other channels. But yeah, obviously partnership, any referral is always way better. And word of mouth and referrals has always been our biggest channel for driving customers. So it's definitely, and I think that in our case, like a lot of it is not from the partners themselves. It's from like our sales team, like nurturing their own relationships, building up like strong customer relationships, the customer success experience, building up strong relationships there, and getting all of those to be referring businesses as well, because your customers are often your best referral partners anyway.
Yeah, that is also very interesting. Yeah, that's been a good source of referrals for us. Even like people that were in front of the HR department of one company and now they've moved to another one and they brought us along. That has been a huge help as well. But I feel like, yeah, with partnerships, if you do a good job of like explaining your goals, as I said, and communicate how you work, and then the other company, the partner can just do a good referral because they have a clear understanding of what works for us. And so that just improves the numbers for everyone.
And are you offering sort of incentives for sending over customers? Like how do you, so that's always a tricky thing of like, sort of like intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards. So sometimes like offering money motivates people to take action. And sometimes it makes it feel like it's like a job, or like, it's like, well, $500, but like, I don't care about $500 if it's just going to my company anyway. So it kind of demotivates. How do you think about like actually rewarding your partners for the referrals they send?
Yeah, it's been like a combination of a lot of different things. So obviously there's the revenue share agreement that we have with a few companies, like with affiliates, for example, that's something that just happens because that is a reasonable source of income to them. With strategic partners, we kind of just waive those referral share agreements and just decide to give a better discount to each other's referrals, which I think it makes more sense. What we're trying to do is a bit of a different things. Like internally, for example, now we're doing like a little bit of like a small competition within our AEs to see who refers the most our partners, for example. And we kind of just want to build the process internally and feel like if we trust our process that we're referring them the most, then they'll feel the quote unquote obligation to refer us as well, because they'll see that we're bringing them business. And so that in a way, the karma will get back to us. And so we're doing that instead of just giving like remunerations directly to the partner, we're doing to our sales team, and that will keep the partner happy, hopefully.
Yep. Yeah. And that'll keep your sales team very motivated to actually take action. Yeah, we've been testing out some stuff like that for especially the customer success team, because a lot of times they're the ones that are closest to the customers, and they could easily be asking like, hey, is there any other people that you would recommend use our platform? And I'm sure it's the same for you, where like if they're the ones building the strong relationships, like they just have to ask. And sometimes, especially in that role where they're less like directly incentivized, like the sales team, like you really have to figure out ways to like get them to get outside of their like comfort zone to ask.
For sure. Like one of the things that we're looking at now in partnerships is that we kind of trying. So we built this category, right? The distributed HR category, as I mentioned in the beginning. And we see that there's a whole cycle of like posting the job, getting the job, setting the details and everything. And a lot of the partnerships that we did are catered to our sales team to refer them. But a lot of them, like you said, are with the customer success managers and account managers. They happen when they've been with us for a couple of weeks, months, years, whatever. And so right now we're trying to identify which ones should be enabled by the account managers and the CSMs. And so now we're starting that process of like, these are great partnerships for the sales cycle, and these are great for when they're our customer and for retention.
I definitely think this is one of the things that I've been finding very interesting about like the current wave of like successful tech companies and startups is like having that much stronger emphasis on customer success again. I feel like for a long time, companies just consider customer support as something you like offload onto someone else and you don't really focus on. And the ability to just sort of focus on that has just been like amazing for getting referrals. And it really does help grow your business fast. Like it's not a cost center at all.
Yeah. I mean, that obviously like a CSM is a very important role in every company. And especially in ours is like a lot of the important work is done by the sales team in the beginning and our product specialists. But the CSMs have such a key role on keeping everyone happy because you're dealing with like on the side of the company and on the side of the person employed via Oyster, you're dealing with payroll and salaries and benefits at every month. So you want to make sure that you keep them happy because you want to get paid at the end of the month. You want to make sure that you're doing it correctly and every time all the things are like compliant and everything. So the CSMs have a very important job at our organization, and we try to keep them very motivated and happy because it's key. We wouldn't exist without them.
Yeah, and it definitely makes marketing and partnerships so much easier when you have great customer success.
True.
Cool. So I know you're hiring a bunch of different roles, and that can be partnerships. I feel like is one of the weirdest one to hire for because what partnerships means to one person is so different from what it means to another person. How have you been sort of like looking for people for these positions and like doing the pattern matching of finding the people that are a good fit for what you're truly looking for them to do in that role?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. And I wish I had like a great answer to it, to be honest, because it's so complicated, right? And I think like, first of all, above all that we look just for great human beings. We would enjoy working together. It feels like a lot of the work, like we mentioned a lot of tools, we mentioned a lot of process documentation and everything. But at the end of the day, partnerships is about building relationships. And so we just want people that are very empathetic and personable and people that actually care about other human beings. And I think that's very important for us. And so embodying our values in that sense, it's just a key for us. We don't want high performers that are not great people and don't embody the values. That's for sure. So after that, looking at the roles we try to do like a mix of things. So when we're doing interviews for partnerships roles, we talk to people that are CSM backgrounds. We talk to people that have sales backgrounds. We talk to people that are very quota driven, people that are not quota driven at all, people for marketing. So we try to give as much opportunity as very different backgrounds. And then we ended up hiring people from very different things, right? On our team, we have me that I never had HR experience, just SaaS experience and partnerships. We have Mel in Canada, and she had a lot of partnerships experience with nonprofits, for example. We've got Myra that has been working with integrations and was working with partnerships at an HR company, Workable. So we do have like a myriad of backgrounds within the company. And so we try to do it as much as we can like that.
Yeah, it's a very good approach. Like everyone likes to work with people that they like and like them. And that's going to be more important at the end of the day, because all the other stuff doesn't matter. If people hate your partnership person, it doesn't matter how much their resume says that they're great.
Exactly. Like Jess, who's managing now the partnerships, she's the interim head of partnerships. I think she agrees a lot on this take where we just want to bring cool people together, and then we'll figure out everything together, right? And so, for example, with affiliates, we brought in Sergey. He had a lot of experience with affiliates on a lot of different industries, mostly in gaming, that are very different from what we're working right now. But he was such a skilled person and such a personal person at the same time that we kind of like, we're going to have a lot of fun working with this person, right? And so we just brought him along, and it's been a joy to work with him, for example.
And just out of curiosity, what round of venture funding are you on?
So last year we raised Series A and Series B.
Yeah. Because it sounds like you've managed to grow a ton while still keeping a healthy culture. And as we've seen with some of the big tech companies that raised a ton of money, they just hired so many people and they sort of eroded any they built very toxic cultures because they just hired so massively that they hired anyone from any place with any resume, no matter how many times they'd been fired before. So it sounds like you're definitely doing some stuff right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like I've been a lot of these are very concerns for a lot of people. Like we try to do even with interviews for other roles within the company. Sometimes I join, so we try to bring people that are just for the cultural fit sort of thing. And I do those calls, and a lot of people ask me, "What's the culture like?" Because we're all remote, and most of us never met in person. And one of the things that you just said, like I've been in companies that we work in an office, and we still develop a toxic culture in a lot of ways because we were just going so fast that we kind of brought high performers. And then if you fall under a lot of like just bringing on like employee referrals, you can just kind of go through one same route of like the same type of people, right? And we try to do actively go against that. Obviously we care a lot about employee referrals, but we also try to bring people that are from different backgrounds. And we're hiring from the whole world because we are a company from the whole world. We are 320 people right now from more than 50 countries. So as you can see, there's whole types of different backgrounds, different cultures, and everything together. And we want that to be the reality of us as well.
And just to reiterate, so you joined less than a year ago still?
Yeah.
And it was less than 50 people?
Yeah. And now we're 320 people. Yeah, it's insane.
So that's very impressive. And also it's a good sign when an HR company can actually hire well. Like many HR companies are not good at hiring.
Exactly. Imagine our company like helping others to go remote and hire people all over the world, but we would work from an office and have a toxic culture.
Cool. So if you were, I mean, this has all been very recent, but if I'm sure you've had like just sort of the trial by fire to like get to learn everything. If you were starting over again, building a new partnership team, what would be like sort of your like initial focus?
Yeah. Trying to think about this. This is a very complicated question. One of the things that I would do is just, I would understand, first of all, I'll try to understand all the work that has been done before, because always, even if there's not an official partnerships person in the company, there's always someone that just had to take a stab at it, because there's always things that just show up to do, right? In our company, our CEO and our head of sales did a lot of that in the beginning. And so I would start talking internally to understand how my colleagues view that role, what type of conversations they may have with the prospects and customers, and try to understand like what sort of partnerships do they envision based on the conversations they had, right? Then I would start to map out the ecosystem, understand the day-to-day of our ICP. Like I had to do a lot of this here because I'm not an HR person, right? And so trying to understand what goes through a people ops person hiring people all over the world. And then after understanding that and map out the ecosystem, just build relationships, just go to LinkedIn, connect with people, try to understand their side of things, join a couple of events if possible, a couple of webinars, and just figure out what it's like to be one of your ICP.
ICP being like ideal customer profile.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. And then once you sort of have a feeling of who you should be going after and what they want, what is sort of like the first steps towards actually making that a reality?
Yeah. So I guess like one of the things that I would do is that I would build out like sort of a target list, like a wish list of companies that you would like to partner with. I would try to do a lot of the work even before reaching out to them. So try and understand how we would work with them on this case and on this scenario and all of that. And start being like very personable at the beginning, like do the things that don't scale, right? I know it's a cliche in a lot of ways, but reach out, be very like personalized, like send a message one-to-one, try to understand their goals, try to understand how you can work together, pitch some ideas, some structure of things, and ask for advice as well. I think people are way more open to discuss a potential partnership than sometimes people think. And so bring that wish list and just going after all those players just helps quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like so much of partnerships is about just accepting that like the reality is that there's always a ton of inertia at the beginning. Anytime you're bringing on a new partner, that's asking them to basically add work to their side because they haven't worked with you. They haven't got anything yet. So everything you can do to make it as easy as possible and for them to understand the why should they spend time on this partnership? Well, look at all this stuff that they can do that's going to make them look at their company, going to potentially send them more leads, going to do cross marketing. I think that's a really good approach, is just making it as easy as possible for them to take that first step and giving them some understanding of why to take that first step.
Totally agree.
Cool. Any other sort of things that you've been thinking about from like your learnings doing partnerships that either you wish you knew sooner or you would definitely want your team, like your new hires, to learn quickly?
Yeah, I guess like one of the things that I think I failed in the beginning of partnerships at Oyster was I understood where we had to go, but it was so many different things that I tried to do all at once. And I tried to do a little bit of affiliates, a little bit of strategic partnerships, a little bit of integrations. And, you know, like my advice would be to focus on one of those, maybe two at most, and just keep the other one on hold, just because you really want to nail things. Like one of the things that I thought would be easier when we hired the rest of the team was like, oh, we already did a little bit of this, that, and that. So they can pick it up and just augment it, which wasn't true because a lot of the work that I did with affiliates, for example, was really bad just because I didn't know. And I was just like, sort of just half-assed at it the way I was doing it. And so the way that I try to understand is like, be clear with no's and things that you just can't pick it up right now. Sometimes you have to, but if you can, just put them on hold until you can find qualified people to do it, and just do the things that you know you can do quite well. Just go at it and just be at 100%.
Yeah, I think that's extremely excellent advice. Like that's always been the difficulty we've had with our partnership side. It's just there's 10,000 potential partnerships, and there's also people that will come and want to be your partner, and almost all of them are complete distractions. As we were talking about earlier, like when you find a good partner and you can tell that they're going to be a champion, like they're contributing stuff, they're suggesting ideas for how to work together, like that's going to be a partner that's going to really deliver results. Whereas a lot of other partnerships, even if they show some interest, if they're not taking any action, like it very often becomes like a giant distraction. And there's so many opportunities out there with partnerships. It's really about figuring out which ones are actually going to move forward and then moving those as quickly forward and making sure you have a couple more in your pipeline at all times.
For sure. It's so easy to say yes to a partnership and then nothing happens, right?
Yep.
So just make sure that you have a clear compass of where you're going, what you want to achieve, and just try to go as much as you can to that, and just take the minimum detours as possibly you can, right? Sometimes there's a request from the leadership team. Sometimes there's a really good company with a different use case that you have to pay attention to, but just try to do the minimum you can on that and just be laser focused on what you're good at.
Definitely. Like, I think that is it. And just because you're focusing, you can do all this extra work and making it easy for the partner. That's why you can spend all the time saying like, here's the roadmap, let's get on a call, let's do all this other stuff, because you can't do that with 1,000 partners, but you can do that with 10 or 20 partners. Find the 5 that are like stellar and really make those drive a massive amount of like long-term results. I think it's kind of fits. So we've been talking with a lot of people on like the B2B, like affiliate management side, and it's very different than like e-commerce affiliate management. So on the B2B affiliate side, like a lot of these is like building like those long-term like content partners, review partners, et cetera. And it kind of fits into that. Like anyone, like on like big strategic partnerships, like there is so much opportunity, but it's really like this will deliver results 6 months from now or a year from now. It's not just like set up and go for these like big strategic partnerships. It's really something that you nurture and is really setting you up so that next year and the year afterwards, you have a sustainable channel. And I mean, we've seen many companies that spend a lot on like paid marketing and they grow really quickly, but then they have a lot of customer churn and then they just sort of like run out of steam because if you don't ever build up partnerships and you're just focusing on like paid media, like it can look good in the early days, but it's going to get more and more expensive and it's going to stop working. And then you're just going to have your growth sputter out, where partnerships are sort of like putting roots that continue to like grow like a full tree.
Definitely. That's what I said in the beginning. I totally agree with what you said, by the way. And like I said, we're 1 year in the journey of working with partnerships at Oyster, but we're looking at partnerships in 5-10 years, right? And that is the key to success with partnerships, is that it's a long road that even if you leave the company in between that time frame, people will continue that relationship. And it's all about keeping those partners happy. Like, I feel like the Pareto Law applies to a lot of things in life, like the 80-20. And with partnerships, it's true, like 20% of your partners will bring 80% of the results in terms of referrals or co-marketing impressions or whatever it may be. And so it's about like bringing good partners to then, like you say, like you bring 10 and then you find 5 stellar and then you go all in, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot about doing that work. And so I agree.
Awesome. And if anyone is interested in potential open roles at Oyster, especially on the partnership side, how can they learn more?
Yeah, so yeah, we're hiring for a ton of roles at Oyster, and even on the partnerships team, we're currently, like I mentioned in the beginning, hiring a strategic partnerships manager for EMEA. We're hiring another potential partnership manager for the Americas time zones, and then we're also hiring a few more partner marketing people. So feel free to reach out via website, via LinkedIn, or bruno@oysterhr.com, and I'm here to answer your questions and clarify any doubts.
Awesome. And any sort of final takeaways or closing notes from your side?
Yeah, I feel like this was the first year of partnerships at Oyster, and I feel like we've done 0.1%. So it definitely feels like we grew a lot, but we grew from zero at the same time. And so one of the things that a big word of advice for everyone, if you're joining Oyster, or even if you're joining another company that has been doing partnerships for some time, there's still so much work to be done. There's still so much to figure out as well. So don't be shy in bringing your ideas, in bringing ownership to partnerships, and just be proactive about things. And I think that is very important. Building relationships will always bring with you to whichever job you move, to whatever career decisions you take. And that's true with partnerships as well. So I build relationships and partnerships now at Oyster with people that I already developed partnerships before at different companies. So it's all about like being a good person and just trying to understand and be helpful at all times. So yeah, that would be my takeaway.
Yeah. And all of these worlds are always a little bit smaller than you think. And definitely everyone remembers the people that everyone thinks are like good people. We have like a few people that came from like the lead gen world. And like, I remember the first couple of conferences that I attended with them, everyone's like, oh, Ross works with you. Kristen works with you. Oh, I love them. I love them so much. Like, that's awesome. Like, let's talk about how to like what you're doing and like the company. Like, it's always amazing that being a good person, there's only so many people that like sort of like leave. I'm sure there's lots of good people, but there's not that many that like leave that impression or do that extra work that goes from like just being like, oh, they were nice, to like, oh, that was an awesome person, I was a really good person. And it's crazy how much like a decade later people still remember that.
Oh yeah. Compound on relationships, and being a good person just brings huge results to not just your work and professional life, but also your personal life. So yeah, so be a good person at all times is always good advice for whatever it may be. But even for partnerships, I feel like this is something that I'm building relationships now that I think I'll be able to still have in 10 years. So that's what I'm going for. It's just to build things that for a longer horizon.
Awesome. This was super great. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And it was definitely super fun to learn from you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Have a good week.
Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Bye-bye.